So good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, October 20th, and this message, this lecture is for Computer Science 1010 only. If you are a student in ES 1060, you are more than welcome to join in, but you will not have any assignments from this content at this time. So for 1010, because 1010 is a 4-credit course and has a programming component, in addition to the problem-solving component, we have some extra topics that we're going to cover, as we've been doing since the beginning. But anyway, so here we are after fall recess, and this is our first week back. The first thing I want to show you is I've posted the content of the first 2 chapters for the textbook. Now, the exercises in chapter 2 are going to be due, homework from chapter 1 and chapter 2 will be due next week for everybody. And basically, chapter 1 is an introduction. There's really nothing to hand in, but please read through that material. And then in chapter 2, there are problems dispersed through the chapter, and you will turn in problems 2.1 through 2.24 on an Excel workbook. So you may have a series of sheets that you'll create in Excel, but it'll all be in one single workbook. And I've also asked you to please name the spreadsheet according to your own name or initials. So I gave an example for if it was me writing it, I would write like AN because my initials are AN homework 1 or something like that. Because if you don't identify yourself by your initials or your name, it's really easy for me to get your work confused with somebody else's work. So we want you to get credit for what you're doing. Anyway, so having said that, we have the material that's due for everybody next week. And then the next thing that we're going to do in here is to talk about working with macros and Visual Basic in Excel. So in addition to being a spreadsheet and a problem-solving environment, there are a couple of capabilities of Excel that are really interesting. One of them is writing macros, which I'll describe in just a moment. And then the other one is using a programming language called Visual Basic. Visual Basic is an old school object-oriented programming language. And Visual Basic, or Visual Basic for Applications, VBA, is built into Excel. So as computer programmers in Computer Science 1010, we'll be using Visual Basic later on in the semester. So for now, there are 2 things that I want you to see. This is a huge file, relatively huge, that I've put on the Moodle page, because as you go through the video of writing macros in Excel, you'll be working with this file. If it opens. There we go. Please open for me. Hang on just a second. If we can get it to open. Hang on, I'm going to have to stop sharing for a minute. So it looks like I may have to download this file. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Okay, so this is a file. This just prevents you from entering a bunch of data. But when you start working with the video, which is where this assignment will come from, when you start working with the video, you'll see that this is the spreadsheet that they're using. And basically what it is a bunch of data. You can see if we look at our rows, we go from A to O, which is fairly large. But if you go down and you look at the column, or if you go on the rows, you go from A to O. But if you look at the columns, you'll see that there are literally hundreds and hundreds of data points. Okay. Now, this is an actual type of a spreadsheet that if you were a loan officer at a bank, you would have something like this, and you would have to work with it on a regular basis, maybe every week or every month. So if you have to do a particular function, like in this particular case, they're looking at the loan status, which is fully paid or delinquent. And they want to change the term delinquent in every single case to the term non-compliant or some other particular term. And so basically what they want to do, instead of picking through this and finding the word delinquent and rewriting it, you know, with a possibility of looking at 500 data points, they write an automated little routine, which is called a macro, in order to do that. Also, there's a column that they want to get rid of, so because they just don't use it on a regular basis. So the video will go through the process of writing a macro, which is basically an automated series of functions or formulas to do that particular thing, so that every time you open up this spreadsheet, 1 week you have one data, the next month you have more data or different data, and you can still do the same functions without having to go through and pick through it every single time. You'll be able to do that by writing a macro. So today, what I really want you to be able to do is to get the macro function in the in an Excel spreadsheet, and there's a step-by-step process for that. So we're not going to work with this spreadsheet yet, except for when you're looking at that video. So you don't have to be horrified. It's a pretty simple exercise that we're actually going to participate in today. But basically, there are a couple of things, and one of them is that we have to tell Excel that we have a macro enabled spreadsheet. So when you save a file like this, you don't just save it, you have to save as, and when you look at your choices, you'll see that it recognizes it's an Excel worksheet, or that you could save it in these other forms, but you have to make sure that you save it as an Excel macro enabled worksheet. That's just a way of telling the Excel that you're going to be running macros in this program. So the other thing is you have to get it so that this ribbon, which right now says file, home, draw, blah blah blah, has a button on it which allows you to use both Visual Basic and macros. So if you go back over here, if you go back to our class page, here we go. Here in the center, right below chapter 2, this just tells you how to make sure that that developer tab is visible. So these directions tell you how to make sure that you have macros and VBA available to you in Excel. So the first little exercise that we're going to do is just making sure that you are able to do this. So if you go down to next week on Friday, there's actually 2 assignments due. One of them is the homework from chapters 1 and chapter 2. And the next one is to watch the videos and then to create a macro on a class example. But if you, this didn't save properly. Hang on, this tab is going to be labeled differently. It's submit, I've got to do, but basically what it is you watch the videos, and I'm not asking you to create a macro at this point, but what I want you to do is to be able to send me a screenshot of your Excel version showing me that you have enabled the developer tab and that you have access to both macros and Visual Basic. So I will change that tab label so that you'll have it, but all you have to do for next Friday for this class is just follow those directions in the center of the page, in the center of the tab for this week, which is to be able to create macros and have that visible. So just do the file option, customize ribbon thing, and then send me a screenshot of that showing me that that you have accomplished that. All right, so at this point, does anybody have any questions? All right then, class, that's it for today. So there's really no homework for this weekend. We're going to, if you wish to start working with Excel, I've put those chapters up so you can get going ahead of time, but we'll work with Excel, the workbook features for the one homework on Monday of next week and on Wednesday of next week. And then for this class, like I said, just making sure that you have access to the developer ribbon and that you can use Visual Basic, that you have access. You don't have to actually use Visual Basic, but you have access to Visual Basic and also to macros. The last piece of information that I wanted to share with you is some versions of Excel have access to Python programming language, and I've contacted our computer services department to see if I can access that here at Northwest College, because if so, you would have a choice of using Visual Basic, or if you're more familiar with Python, you could use Python. But I don't have access to that right now, so I'm going with the VBA. But if I do get access to Python, I will put that on the assignment as an alternative. All right, everybody. Well, listen, have a wonderful weekend. And if you have any questions, give me a call. I'll be around all day. So I will look forward to talking to you, and we'll see you Monday.